Hello everyone, this is James Song here. Welcome to this video. Today, we are covering the writing section of the TOEFL test. In particular, as you can see on the screen, we will be covering integrated writing task of the TOEFL test, which is question 1 of 2 in the writing section of the TOEFL test. Most of you by now may be familiar with the format of this question, but just in case some of you who are not familiar with the integrated writing test yet, or even first time watching integrated writing video, I'll cover direction, question, and the format of this task really quickly. So let's go. Direction, you have 20 minutes to plan and write your response. So the timing. First of all, you will be given 3 minutes extra to read the reading passage and make notes within 3 minutes. But don't worry too much, because even after 3 minutes, you will be able to see the reading passage throughout whole 20 minutes of writing this essay, okay? And after 3 minutes, listening passage will be played only once, real time. So you need to write notes on the listening passage. And then after that, stopwatch will be popped up, and you'll have 20 minutes and you'll count down towards 0, and you need to successfully write the answer to this task, write an essay. Okay, so that's the format of how it goes. So let's read the directions real quick. You have 20 minutes to plan and write your response. Your response will be judged on the basis of the quality of your writing. As I always say, I have strategy videos and I have other videos, and from those videos, I will explain the writing rubric, which means how ETS score your writing tasks. So I won't get into too much during this video because it will take too much time. But quality of your writing basically means your contents, your development, and grammar, okay? And on how well your response presents the points in the lecture, okay? So lecture comes from listening passage. So more important, the subject of this task and the essay we write, the subject should be the listening passage, okay? And how the listening passage's summary relate to the reading passage. That's what we need to do. So the question repeats this once more and emphasize. Summarize the points made in the lecture, meaning summarize the points made in the listening you just heard. Explain how those points in the listening cast doubts on the points made in the reading. So we can immediately understand. Points in the listening will probably oppose the points made in the reading passage. That will be the format of the essay you need to write, compare and contrast type of essay, okay? So my lesson covering integrated writing always have 3 steps, consists of 3 steps. Step 1, we cover the reading passage together, sentence by sentence. And then we'll listen to the step 2, we'll listen to the listening passage and write perfect notes, hopefully. And then step 3, I'll show you my model essay and analyze what you need to do to get the perfect score on this task, okay? And in some other videos covering integrated writing task, I will show you actually live demonstration of trying to cover the reading passage within 3 minutes and writing notes, and then go back to the passage and interpret what my notes mean. But today's video will just cover sentence by sentence, the reading passage. We'll cover the reading passage a little bit more thoroughly, rather than trying to give you a live demonstration within 3 minutes. Okay, so I'll mix it up. Some videos I try to write notes within 3 minutes, stopwatch up, okay, to give you a live demo. Some other videos like today, we'll do it a little bit more thoroughly, okay? So let's get started. Step 1, covering the reading passage together and comprehend and understand together. Okay. Many scientists believe it would be possible to maintain a permanent human presence on Mars or Moon. Okay, so not every, but many scientists believe it's possible to maintain a permanent human presence where? On Mars or Moon, okay? On the other hand, excuse me, conditions on Venus, okay, not Mars or Moons. What about conditions on Venus? What about Venus? Are so extreme and inhospitable, okay, so you cannot live there, inhospitable. You cannot bear, okay, very extreme and you cannot live. That maintaining a human presence in Venus, on Venus, would be impossible, okay? So we'll probably get 3 reasons of why maintaining human presence on Venus is impossible. Okay, we'll probably get 3 conditions in our body paragraph. So if I was just writing the reading part, because I can always go back and read a passage while I write an essay for this task, I'll really write very little just to help me tackle the listening part. Because, there's no point writing a lot since we can always read this passage while we're doing these tasks, right? So I just need enough notes to help me listen to the listening passage better, okay? All right, so I'll just write something like, okay, so reading intro, conditions on Venus, extreme. So, cannot maintain human presence, something like this, okay? So I can make a full sentence out of this, okay? Conditions on Venus are so extreme that maintaining human presence on Venus is impossible. Done. Good start, body 1. First, atmospheric pressure at Venus surface is at least 90 times greater than the pressure at Earth surface. So, too much pressure. It will just crush me down or push me down into the ground or break me, okay? The gravity, the pressure, atmospheric pressure will be just too much to bear, too much for me to live. This means, for example, force of 100 kilograms is pressing me down on every centimeters of surface. So it's just trying to tell you a lot of force will be pressing you down, okay? So you cannot live like on Earth. For example, more detail again, all spacecraft that have landed on Venus has been crushed. Okay, wow, it's pretty scary. By this extreme pressure, this extreme atmospheric pressure, okay? Almost anything humans might land on Venus will be crushed as well, right? So first body, atmospheric pressure too much compared to Earth. This means 100 kilograms in pressing down. So yeah, I could have written 100 kilograms. Just see all this detail as one, because I can always read these sentences again, Okay, all right. So I just say just the last bit. Okay, because this summarized the whole detail very well. Okay, almost anything human might land. Okay, almost everything human might land on Venus would be crushed. Okay, yeah, because of too much atmospheric pressure. All right, second, so I can look at these notes and make the sentence. First reason is that atmospheric pressure would be just too great. Too much atmospheric pressure compared to Earth. So almost anything human might try to land on Venus would be crushed. So humans cannot live there. Okay, moving right along very quick. Yeah, too much. So anything human might land would be crushed. Second, as far as we know so far, there are no reservoir of water on Venus surface. Okay, so as far as we know until now, at least, may not be the same in the future. They may find something in the future, but so far, there is no trace of water on the surface of Venus, okay, on Venus surface and atmosphere of Venus. Okay, so no water. We cannot live there. Planet's atmosphere made up mostly of carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and sulfuric acid. Okay, so planet's atmosphere is not made up of like oxygen, maybe we need. Okay, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, sulfuric acid. Contains hardly any oxygen, here we go, or water vapor. So no water and no oxygen. How can we live? How can human live without water and oxygen? Impossible, right? So let's read on. Water and oxygen would therefore probably have to be supplied to Venus from Earth. I mean, that's impossible. It's like, what is this? Online shopping? Okay, I mean, why are we live there in the first place if we have to ship oxygen and water? It sounds ridiculous. Okay, so that would be the first detail. So topic sentence would be no water on Venus surface at least, and not much oxygen in the atmosphere. So we cannot get much oxygen and water on Venus surface. Okay. And water and oxygen would therefore probably have to be supplied to Venus from Earth. So this is detail 1. So idea of ensuring regular supply of water and oxygen from Earth is impractical in the most extreme cases. Yeah, it's just won't work. How can we regularly ship water and oxygen so that we can survive there? It's just, sounds very impractical, right? And would therefore defeat the purpose of establishing permanent station on Venus. Yeah, like what's the point of living there if we cannot survive without water and oxygen on Venus surface, right? Yeah, so not much or no water and oxygen. So it will probably be supplied from Earth, okay? And this is not practical and defeats the purpose of trying to create human presence. Okay, like what's the point? Trying to make a permanent presence of human being where there is no oxygen and water, right? Cool. So no water and oxygen must be supplied from Earth, so it's not practical and defeats the purpose of trying to create human presence on Venus. Okay, so far so good. So that's detail 2. Not practical and defeats the purpose. Okay. Cool. Very smoothly moving on. Body 3. Let's have a look. Third, very little sunlight reaches the planet's surface. So no sun. No sunlight, no oxygen, no water. It doesn't seem like a right place for human being. Okay, very little sunlight reaches the planet's surface. Okay, so we cannot live on Venus's surface. It would be too cold. Okay, let's read on. About 60% of the sunlight that hits the Venus is reflected back into space. Okay, by the thick clouds that fills the atmosphere. Okay, Venus surface fills the atmosphere. We cannot absorb 60% of the sunlight because it just reflects it back into the space. So we cannot get that sunlight. So 60% gets reflected away from Venus, which means only 40% of the sunlight can get through the clouds. Okay, so they only get 40%, which may not be ideal. Below this cloud is dense layer. Okay, so there's another trouble. So, oops. So 60% reflected away. So we can only get 40%. That's detail 1. And there's another detail below these clouds. There's another trouble. Okay, so we only can get 40%. But then again, below these clouds that reflect 60% away and only get 40%, and below these clouds, there is something else. What is it? Dense layer of carbon dioxide. What does it do? Which blocks even more light. So we cannot even get 40%. Okay, it's not like at least all of the 40% are absorbed. Okay, even within 40%, this layer of carbon dioxide will block some of the sunlight from 40% left. Okay, so that's a real trouble. The lack of light would prevent the use of solar power cells. Yeah, not enough light. Not enough light. So what happens to humans? Could not get electricity to power their machines and equipment. Okay, so if I synthesize a little bit, you don't have to, but I'd like to, because that's like a conclusion. So therefore, all right, so not much light for humans to get electricity to power our machines to live. Okay, not enough light to be able to live. Okay, topic sentence. And detail 1, 60% reflected by clouds and 40% left. But even then, some of this 40% blocked by dense layer of carbon dioxide. Okay. Yeah, so let's look at these notes and make full sentences so that we got the contents absolutely right and spot on. So conditions on Venus surface are so extreme and inhospitable, it's impossible to maintain human presence on Venus. First reason, atmospheric pressure is too great. So anything human might try to land on Venus surface will be crushed with this pressure. Second, not much water and oxygen. So it needs to be supplied from Earth, and it's impractical and defeats the purpose. Third reason, not much light for humans to get enough power, get enough electricity to power the machines to live. We need our mobile phones. We need our phones, right? Or computers or whatever, or heater or air conditioner, whatever that might be. Okay, so not enough light for humans to generate enough electricity to live. Okay, that's topic sentence. Detail, 60% of the sunlight are reflected by thick clouds and 40% left are again blocked by dense layer of carbon dioxide below the clouds. Yeah, perfect. So I'm sure we understood and covered the reading passage quite completely. So let's move on to step 2. Let's see you in 2 seconds. I'll play the listening passage and we can write the perfect notes together right here when I come back. Okay, let's move on. Okay, guys. Yeah, don't be surprised. I just enlarged the notes page we have just written so that I can show you the listening notes on here while looking at the reading notes at the same time to compare and contrast, like you should really do in your TOEFL test. Okay, do it on the same page. Draw the line in the middle or fold in half or whatever. Okay. All right. So let's continue. Let's listen to the listening passage and trying to write notes. Let's go. Here we go, guys.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
Setting up a permanent station on Venus may not be without challenges, but it is certainly possible. One solution that's been proposed is to establish a station that would be floating in Venus's atmosphere, like a balloon, rather than standing on its surface. The station would float about 50 kilometers above Venus's surface. On a station located high in the atmosphere, the problems the reading mentions can be solved. First, atmospheric pressure. Well, it is a well-known physical fact that high up in the atmosphere, the pressure is much lower than at the surface. So, while the pressure at Venus's surface is too high for humans, 50 kilometers up in the atmosphere, the pressure is equal to the normal pressure we're used to here on Earth. There would be no danger of the station getting crushed. Second, water and oxygen. Well, as you read, Venus's atmosphere contains compounds such as carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid. There are chemical processes that could be used on the station to make water and oxygen out of these compounds. So, the water and oxygen necessary for human survival could be produced using chemical materials that can be easily obtained from Venus's atmosphere. It would not be necessary to import them. Third, the light-blocking clouds. Well, it's true that there are still clouds 50 kilometers above Venus's surface. However, clouds above that level are not very thick, so there would be a considerable amount of sunlight filtering through. Moreover, as you read, the clouds reflect sunlight. The station could make use of this reflected light, too. In other words, its solar power cells could collect both the direct sunlight filtering from above and the sunlight reflected by the clouds below. More than enough electricity could be generated this way to power the station.
Summarize the points made in the lecture, being sure to explain how the proposal discussed in the lecture would solve the specific challenges described in the reading passage.
Okay, how much did you get? I'm pretty confident. Let's go through it together. Okay. So in the introductory paragraph in the listening, basically the lecturer said, it may be impossible at the surface level So on the Venus's surface, okay, but if we have the station, floating station, above 50 kilometers above the Venus's surface in the atmosphere, in the Venus atmosphere. So don't have the human presence on the surface of Venus. Yeah, surface of Venus would be hard or impossible. But if we make a station, 50 kilometers floating station above the surface of Venus, okay, these problems can be solved, right? So yeah, he's agreeing that if you want to have the presence on the surface of Venus, Venus's surface, is not going to work. But if we make a floating station, human station, that is 50 kilometers above the surface of Venus, then we should be able to maintain human presence, okay, at the Venus's atmosphere, 50 kilometers up from the surface. Yeah, sorry, I'm repeating myself 3 times. Okay, so let's move on. So it's very indirect. We need to do some synthesis. We need to change the order around, and we need to paraphrase, and we need to understand, and we need to write the topic sentence. We cannot just kind of do a dictation of this in our essay. But, you know, when we're writing notes, there's no other ways because we'll lose so much content. We just write it down, and remember, it's indirect. And when we write the essay, we can change the order around, right? So it said in the higher up in the atmosphere, the atmospheric pressure is a lot lower, okay? So at the surface level, the pressure will be too much. But at this level, okay, that the lecturer proposed, about 50 kilometers above the surface, all right, higher up in the atmosphere that the lecturer is proposing, actual pressure will be similar, about the same as the Earth pressure on the Earth's surface. What does it mean? It's livable, right? So on Venus's surface, if we're trying to live on surface of Venus, we will be crushed. But higher up in the atmosphere, like 50 kilometers above, for example, atmospheric pressure is a lot lower. Actually, it's almost similar to Earth pressure. So we can live there, no problem. Okay, nothing will be crushed. Okay. So yeah, so I'll show you in the model essay. Okay. But we got all the contents down, which is good. The second body paragraph, you know, it has carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid, okay, as the reading said, okay, which we didn't write down. We didn't bother because the main point of the reading in the second paragraph was there are not enough water and oxygen, or none. So it has to be shipped from Earth, right? But they do have carbon dioxide, you know, sulfuric acid, okay, and nitrogen. So in the listening, it's saying they can go through the chemical process using carbon dioxide, sulfuric acid, and or nitrogen, or whatever the chemicals you know, Venus has. They can use that chemical, those chemicals, and go through the chemical process using existing materials to generate, make, produce oxygen and water. Okay, all right. Okay, so humans could go through chemical process by using materials from Venus, such as carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid, to make oxygen and water. They can create it, right? So there will be no need to import to be supplied from Earth, which would defeats the purpose of trying to maintain human presence, and it will be just totally impractical. It's just ridiculous, right? Because people would die immediately without water and oxygen. So how often and how much, you try to import it from Earth, right? It just doesn't make any sense, but there will be no need for that, right? Because you can make oxygen and water at Venus by using chemicals available at Venus. Okay, cool. All right, third body paragraph. So cloud higher up in the atmosphere, a little bit like first body paragraph, okay? Not at the surface level, but if the station is located higher up in the atmosphere, not at the surface of Venus surface, then cloud will not be that thick. What does that mean? You can get more lights, more sunlight, because the cloud will not be that thick, right? Okay, it's not like 60% of the lights will be reflected away to the space from the clouds, because if you try to live at the surface of Venus, the cloud will be too thick. But if you go up, higher up in the atmosphere, the cloud will not be that thick. Means there will be less sunlight will be reflected away. More will be absorbed. Okay. And on top of that, so more light will be absorbed rather than reflected away. And second, this was really interesting. You can actually make use of reflected light. You need to understand this part. It's a little bit hard. So if you are at the surface level, if the lights are reflected back to the space, you cannot use that because sunlight reflected back into the atmosphere. It doesn't reach the surface level. But if your station is located in the atmosphere, then if the lights are reflected from the surface back into the atmosphere, you can actually get some of that. All right, so if you're at the surface, the lights are reflected from the clouds back into the space, you cannot get any of that sunlight if you are trying to live at the surface. But if you're at the atmosphere, if you're higher up, then you can actually catch some of the reflected lights from the cloud as well, because you are at the atmosphere, not at the surface. Understood? Yeah, so you could get more sunlight absorbed because clouds are thinner, not as thick, so you can get more light absorbed. Plus, you can actually catch some of the reflected light back into the atmosphere, back into the space, because you are at the atmosphere, not on the surface, okay? So more absorption, more light, plus you can catch some reflected light. So important detail is the consequence. So what is the result? Because you can get light, more light absorption, and catch some reflected lights, these two light sources combined, you will get enough light, unlike at the surface level, you will actually get enough light to generate, create, produce enough electricity on Venus to create enough electricity. Okay, generate enough electricity from enough light sources to live. Okay, now you can use your mobile phone. Okay, you can use your phone, you can use your computer, you can create enough electricity from enough light sources to, you know, turn on your aircon and heaters and whatever you need. Okay, so you can receive enough light to produce, create, generate enough electricity for humans to stay there and live. Okay, so let's listen to the listening passage one more time and match him up with our notes, but let me just read this through real quick. Okay, you know, it has some challenges, but it's certainly possible to have human presence in Venus if we don't live at the surface of the Venus, but trying to have a floating station at the Venus atmosphere about 50 kilometers above the surface level. First, as you go higher up in the atmosphere, the atmospheric pressure drops. So at the station, the atmospheric pressure would be similar to Earth pressure, so nothing will be crushed and humans could live. Second, through the chemical process, oxygen and water can be created, can be produced in Venus, because Venus has chemicals like carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid. So oxygen and waters can be made in Venus. So there's no need to import water and oxygen from Earth. Third, higher up in the atmosphere, the cloud will not be as thick, so you will receive more sunlight. Plus, since you are higher up in the atmosphere, you can use some reflected light. So there will be enough light received to generate enough electricity for humans to live. Okay? So let's listen to the listening passage and match up our notes, okay, to understand this passage clearly. Here we go.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
Setting up a permanent station on Venus may not be without challenges, but it is certainly possible. One solution that's been proposed is to establish a station that would be floating in Venus's atmosphere, like a balloon, rather than standing on its surface. The station would float about 50 kilometers above Venus's surface. On a station located high in the atmosphere, the problems the reading mentions can be solved. First, atmospheric pressure. Well, it is a well-known physical fact that high up in the atmosphere, the pressure is much lower than at the surface. So, while the pressure at Venus's surface is too high for humans, 50 kilometers up in the atmosphere, the pressure is equal to the normal pressure we're used to here on Earth. There would be no danger of the station getting crushed. Second, water and oxygen. Well, as you read, Venus's atmosphere contains compounds such as carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid. There are chemical processes that could be used on the station to make water and oxygen out of these compounds. So, the water and oxygen necessary for human survival could be produced using chemical materials that can be easily obtained from Venus's atmosphere. It would not be necessary to import them. Third, the light-blocking clouds. Well, it's true that there are still clouds 50 kilometers above Venus's surface. However, clouds above that level are not very thick, so there would be a considerable amount of sunlight filtering through. Moreover, as you read, the clouds reflect sunlight. The station can make use of this reflected light too. In other words, its solar power cells could collect both the direct sunlight filtering from above and the sunlight reflected by the clouds below. More than enough electricity could be generated this way to power the station.
Beautiful, right? Perfect. Okay.
Summarize the points made in the...
So second step done. So let's move to the final step. Let's put these listening and reading notes on our left and pull up the model essay on our right. And let's see how we can perfectly make a full sentences from the notes we have successfully written down. Okay. So step 3, let's look at model essay and let's get the perfect score. Let's go, guys. Okay, guys, let's finish this off. So we have the model essay here and we have the notes on the left. So let's analyze how this model essay can be created based on the notes that we have produced. So 3 sentences, introduction, if possible, always, to write the perfect integrated writing task. Okay. So you can use this as the almost like a template to this kind of question. So it was arguing about one point whether this is possible or not. So topic of discussion was whether it is possible to maintain permanent human presence on Venus, right? So the template could be both reading and listening passages are dealing with whether it is possible or not, right? So the topic of discussion is whether it is possible, it is feasible to maintain a permanent human presence on Venus, okay, or not. So this is a topic of discussion. We need to catch and write in there. And the template is both reading and listening passages are dealing with whether it is possible to maintain permanent human presence on Venus, okay? Sorry if I repeated myself. Second sentence, reading says this, however, listening says that, okay? The reading states 3 problems that make a permanent presence unfeasible, right? Okay, so reading states 3 problems that makes this presence, this human presence, impossible, right? Nice and clear. And third sentence, however, listening, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So however, the listening states that building a floating station in Venus atmosphere 50 kilometers above the surface, right? So, you know, it's minor details, so you can take this out. So, however, the listening states that building a floating station in Venus atmosphere will solve the problems the reading mentioned. Okay? Right? So, however, the listening states that building a floating station in Venus atmosphere will solve the problems mentioned in the reading. All right? So, both reading and listenings are topic of discussion, the common topic they're discussing. The second sentence, reading says this, reading's thesis of introduction. However, listening says that. Okay? The thesis of the listening. Cool. Done and dusted. Body 1. First, the lecture in the listening claims that, so could be used as a template, I think, if you want it. High up in the atmosphere, the pressure is much lower than at the surface. Okay? So topic sentence done. Main idea of this paragraph. So details are 50 kilometers above the atmosphere, the pressure is the same as the Earth. So nothing will be crushed and it will be livable higher up in the atmosphere. Okay, two details. So 50 kilometers up in the atmosphere, the pressure is equal to the normal pressure on Earth. Detail 1 completed. Therefore, there will be no danger of station getting crushed. Detail 2. Beautiful. Okay, perfect. This refutes the reading's claim that, so bridge sentence template you can use when you're getting into the reading part. Okay, so what this reading part says? Air pressure is too great, almost anything humans try to land on Venus surface will be crushed. Okay. So this refutes the reading's claim that. So what's the reading's point? Atmospheric pressure at Venus surface is much higher than at Earth surface. Therefore, thus, almost anything that human land on Venus will be crushed. Means it's not livable because everything will be crushed. So body 1 completed. Let's move on to body 2. Second, the lecture explains that water and oxygen could be produced on Venus. Okay, so oxygen and water can be made in Venus. Okay. As Venus's atmosphere contains compounds such as carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid, chemical process would be utilized, or there are chemical processes, or there are possible chemical processes, however you want to paraphrase, I guess, to make water and oxygen on Venus. Okay, so there are chemicals available to use chemical process to make oxygen and water. Detail 1. Okay, so you don't need to import oxygen and water from Earth, which is impractical, right? Okay, so it would not be necessary to import, slight paraphrase, water and oxygen from Earth. Okay, so direct topic sentence, main idea, done. And because Venus atmosphere has necessary material like carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid to make water and oxygen. Detail 1. Okay, so water and oxygen can be created on Venus. Topic sentence. They have necessary compounds or chemicals like carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid to make water and oxygen on Venus, from Venus. Detail 1. And detail 2, so you don't need to import water and oxygen from Earth. Okay? Yeah, perfectly done. This opposes reading's claim that, so bridge expression template to move into the reading summary. So the reading summary is water and oxygen is not available, so it needs to be supplied from Earth, which is ridiculous, cannot be done, not practical. Okay. The lack of oxygen and water in Venus would force these to be supplied from Earth, which makes a permanent station on Venus impractical, pointless. Okay, it does not meet the purpose of trying to live there. Okay, so not enough oxygen and water in Venus would force these to be supplied from Earth, which is totally impractical. Okay. Topic sentence and detail as one thing when we summarize the reading part to make it shorter than the listening part. Listening, you write down everything, okay? The listening part, you write your topic sentence, detail 1, detail 2, okay? The reading part, you try to summarize as a whole. Topic sentence plus detail as a whole into one sentence, ideally, okay? Cool. So let's finish this off. All right. Last body paragraph. Third, the lecture states that enough light can be received to generate adequate amount of electricity. So however you want to paraphrase it. Okay, so the main point, if we want to synthesize and create a topic sentence, is basically at the Venus atmosphere higher up, 50 kilometers above the surface, we can receive enough light, sunlight, to create enough electricity for us to live on Venus. That's the point, okay? So how I wrote it, the lecture states that, okay, template, enough light can be received to generate enough electricity for humans to live, okay? Adequate amount, right? Necessary amount. So topic sentence, main idea, okay? So 2 points would be 50 kilometers above the surface or higher up in the atmosphere or floating station at the atmosphere. We can receive more light because of the thinner clouds and make use of reflected lights as well. Okay, so we can create more electricity. Okay, so that's the detail. Since clouds above 50 kilometers above Venus surface are not very thick, there will be sufficient sunlight filtering through, so we can absorb more sunlight. Additionally, the station could also use the reflected light. Yeah, again, we have 4 sentences summary here, which is not usual. We 3 sentences are enough, but we thought, we want to be a little bit detailed and write the consequences. You can. I mean, this part would not really affect your score as much, all right? So what I mean is, even if you didn't write this sentence down, you would probably get the perfect score, okay? Yeah, definitely. So solar power cells can collect both direct and reflected light to generate enough electricity. Okay, so yeah, it's a consequences, and we wrote it loud and clear in our first sentence. Enough light can be received to generate enough electricity for humans to live, right? So you don't really need to write this sentence for points, okay? But I thought it was natural. Yeah, it got a little longer, which is not ideal, but it kind of flow better to include this sentence, so I did, okay? But usually 3 sentences are enough because this is a summarization, not dictation, okay? All right, last part. This refutes the reading's claim that. So another template you can use. Moving into the readings summary. Insufficient sunlight reaches the Venus surface to create electricity due to reflection from thick clouds and blockage by dense layer of CO2. Okay, so this as like a topic sentence. So there are two details actually, but I just kind of, put it into one idea as a whole. Okay, so not enough light will be received to generate enough electricity for humans to live because, thick clouds will reflect the light away and dense layer of carbon dioxide will also block the lights, into one sentence. So you got a bit long here. So this refutes the readings claim that insufficient sunlight reaches the Venus surface to create necessary amount of electricity for humans to live. An idea? Because due to thick cloud will reflect the light away and dense layer of carbon dioxide will block the lights. Okay, so yeah, third paragraph, pretty long, third body paragraph, bit longer than usual, but hey, you need to be flexible. Okay, so I won't read the essay again because I want to emphasize and show you one more time, but I don't have to read it. You can read it by yourself. So there you have it. Perfectly done and dusted. Another task done, and you can work towards this quality to score perfect score in integrating writing tasks. I hope this was useful, and thank you very much once again. And I really appreciate you have chosen me to study TOEFL with. So I'll try my best to come up with, another lesson that is worth your time. Okay. All right, guys, let's keep going. And thank you very much for watching this video till the end. And I'll see you next time with another great lesson. Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Bye.